people have just discovered something and the world needs to know. Go to setting, camera, scroll on this composition, and then take mirror from camera. Do it. And when you take a selfie, it won't flip it anymore. You actually get the photo that you see you've taken.
First of all, thank you. The response to my last video has actually blown me away. Like, I cannot believe it. So I'm just gonna really quickly try to run you through all the equipment that I used. Main source of light, this Kudos soft light, and this huge octagonal diffuser. To highlight my products, I used 2 of these newer LED panels, which have dimmable white and yellow light on the back. And finally, my go-to camera is a Sony a7 III mirrorless. I use this with the kit lens, which is a 24 to a 70. Yes, I think, and a 50mm macro lens for close-up shots. And I'm running out of time, but if you want to see my full home studio setup, I actually uploaded a video about it on YouTube this week. So go into my profile, click the Instagram logo, and you can get to my YouTube through there. Okay, thank you.
Forget that melody?
I want, dude, give me some good.
When I popped off, then your girl gave me just a lip.
Still taking pictures like this for Instagram? Stop taking them like that. Take it like this. Use 0.5 zoom, put your ratio on 4/3, set a timer for 10 seconds, flip your camera upside down, then either use a tripod or make a tripod. For this one, I used a rock and a stick. And then you're gonna just wanna do a dope pose next to whatever you're trying to take a picture with. And then after the timer goes off, it should look a little like this. Like and follow on Instagram for more tips. Still taking your pictures like this? Stop taking your pictures like this. Next time, do it like this. Put your phone on 0.5 zoom, flip your camera upside down, then make sure the bottom 2 grids have the sky in it. This will help you create a good composition. Once you have that all set, just take a picture. It should look something like this. Like and follow on Instagram for more. Still taking your pictures like this? Stop taking your pictures like this. Try this instead next time. Switch your phone over to panel mode, turn your phone sideways, have your subject go against a big object, and then what you're gonna do is start from the ground and then work your way up until you pass the object. Once you've gone up past your whole object as far as you wanna go, you just stop, and you should have something kinda like this. Like and follow for more.
Camera Basics Part 1, Shutter Speed. The shutter of the camera opens to expose the sensor to light, which is what creates the photo. Shutter speed is displayed as a fraction of a second. This number is how long it takes for the shutter to open and close again. This number represents how fast the shutter is moving and how long the sensor is therefore exposed to light. The higher the number, the faster the shutter, and vice versa, the lower the number, the slower the shutter. A fast shutter speed will freeze movement, giving incredible detail on any fast-moving objects, whereas a slow shutter speed will incorporate a lot of motion blur. For long exposures or night shots, you will use a slow shutter speed because this means that the shutter will be open long enough to let in enough light to properly expose your photos. And has a pretty cool effect with light trails. Camera Basics Part 2, Aperture. Aperture is the hole in the lens where the light travels through to the sensor. The wider the gap, the more light that is allowed in. Vice versa, the smaller the gap, the less light is allowed in. Aperture is expressed in f numbers, also known as f-stops. The smaller the number, the more open the aperture, and vice versa. The higher the number, the more closed the aperture. Aperture also affects the depth of field in your photos. So the higher the number, the more subjects are in focus, whereas the lower the number, the less things are in focus, meaning more depth of field by isolating either the foreground or the background. You would use a low f-stop for portraits to create depth of field or anything where you'd want to isolate a subject, or you could use a high f-stop to photograph landscapes so that everything is in focus. Camera Basics Part 3, ISO. ISO controls how sensitive your camera is to light. It's usually displayed in numbers from 100 upwards. The higher the number, the more sensitive your camera is to light, and vice versa, the lower the number, the less sensitive your camera is to light. As your ISO increases, the amount of light it takes to properly expose your photos decreases, because your sensor is now more sensitive to the light that's already there. You would use a higher ISO in low light situations, such as shooting inside or shooting at night. Think of it almost as adding fake light. However, there are drawbacks to this. The higher the ISO number, the grainier and more pixelated your image will become. reducing the quality drastically. Unless it's a Sony. You guys have got pretty much free reign over this. You want to try and keep your ISO as low as possible at all times to keep the quality of your photos. But there will be times where you need to increase it in darker situations if you want to maintain a fast shutter speed or a higher aperture. By the end of this video, you'll know how to take amazing shots like these. The first thing you need is a tripod. This is pretty essential, so if you haven't got one, you need to go and get one. Second, you need an ND filter. This is so that you can have a very slow shutter speed in daylight conditions without the shot being very overexposed. Which leads me to my next step. For a long exposure shot, you need your shutter speed to be very slow, so put your camera in manual mode. That shutter speed can be anything from around 3 seconds and slower depending on your shot and environment. Play around with this setting though to find your favourite result, and don't be afraid to go really slow. You can get some pretty cool results from it. And step 4, bonus tip, is to set your camera to a 2-second timer. This is because with a slow shutter speed, any movement will cause motion blur, and you don't want that initial shake from pressing the shutter button to take the photo.
Understanding your camera part 1. So what does ISO mean? ISO is used to adjust your camera's sensitivity to light. Typically, ISO has a scale range from 200 to 6400. You should consider ISO when the weather conditions have changed. Sunnier days typically have an ISO range from 100 to 200. Cloudier days or grey days have an ISO from 400 to 800. And if you're shooting at night time or star photography, use 1600 to 3200. The low light conditions of the church meant this shot was taken at 3200. Whereas this sunrise was taken at ISO 100 because of the natural bright light. Understanding your camera part 2. What is aperture? Aperture is the opening of the lens where light travels into the body and onto the camera sensor. A wider aperture lets more light in, whereas a narrow aperture lets less light in. Typically we express this in f-stop numbers, and it determines how wide the aperture is. f2.8 lets more light flood in but creates a shallow depth of field, whereas f22 lets less light in, creating a deep depth of field. A portrait photographer uses a low f-stop like f2.8 to create a shallow depth of field but keep the subject in focus, whereas a landscape photographer would choose f8 or f11 to achieve maximum depth of field. However, aperture does affect shutter speed. A lower f-stop means more light and a faster shutter speed, whereas a higher f-stop means that the shutter speed will be open much longer.
Can I tell you one secret that I wish somebody told me when I started off photography? Do not shoot in direct sunlight. Shadows are your best friend. Try shooting under a tree, a bridge. That way all of your photos are evenly lit. Send, block this sign, and then I'm gonna step way back. So we're giving him a lot of room to breathe. And look, if I come on a little bit closer, look at how much it changes the whole photo.
He likes my diamonds and my pearls. I said thank.
Are you tired of your photos not being straight? Well, I'ma help you. All you gotta do is go into live view, press info. There you go.
Let me get this clear, cause I had no idea. Too much. No shit to mine. Yeah. I'm loving them, but now you change your mind. My heart's a stereo. It beats for.
Are you still taking pictures like this for Instagram? Nah, just stop. Try this instead. Put 0.5, rotate upside down your phone, and put your subject 2/3 on the screen. Then add some colors, change the sky, and add some reflection. Like and follow for more.
I am going to take pictures of this orange tree with this one light that I love from Amazon, Young Now, and it's pretty bright. I'm going to show you guys how I do it. So what I'm doing is I'm going through my camera and I'm doing automatic exposure, automatic focus lock. I lock in on the orange and I bring the exposure down. The reason why I do this is because I want to expose the color in the sky in the background. And then the orange is going to get the lighting from the wand light that you see me putting on. And I'm going above and below and to the side, just finding the right light that I want for this. And that's how we get the color in the background. Then I will take a picture and boom. Now I'm going to go through the iPhone's own settings and I'm going to go ahead and play with all the different settings. You get to see what it could look like and find the thing that I'm most happy with. And here you go. By the way, follow me on Instagram, How to Photograph. Daily tips every day.
So I found this old Polaroid at a local antique shop and finally got some new replacement film for it. So let's see if it works. What do you think, Simon? Super cool about these older cameras, they actually had the batteries attached to the pack of film. So you have no way of actually knowing whether it's gonna work or not unless you get new film. So first step, thanks, Simon. Let's open it and remove this guy. Definitely never remove that tab. You need it. So taking that one out. You also have to make sure with your specific model camera not to buy the I-type film, which is the most common nowadays. Those don't have the battery attached to the back. All right, new film going in. Oh, I hear it. So the green light's on. Took the practice shot. Thanks, Garfunkel. I think I'm gonna go for that shot right there.